What happens when two of Hollywood's most respected voices sit down for what should be a simple interview, and it turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? The tension was palpable, the exchange was raw, and by the end, one of them had had enough. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really happened here. Kelly Clarkson's show has always been known for its warm, inviting atmosphere, the kind of place where celebrities come to relax, share stories, and connect with audiences in a genuine way. Kelly herself has built a reputation for being one of the most personable hosts on television, someone who can make even the most guarded guests open up. But on this particular afternoon, something shifted. The guest was Jodie Foster, an actress who has spent decades in the spotlight, known not just for her incredible talent, but for her fierce protection of her privacy and her no-nonsense approach to interviews. From the moment Jodie walked onto the stage, you could sense something was different. The usual warmth that fills the studio felt muted. Kelly greeted her with that signature bright smile, extending her hand for a handshake that seemed to linger just a moment too long, as if she was trying to gauge the temperature of the room. Jodie's response was polite but measured, her expression neutral as she took her seat across from Kelly. Kelly started the way she always does, with light conversation meant to ease everyone into the flow of things. She brought up Jodie's recent project, a film that had been generating significant buzz in the industry. The kind of movie that critics were already calling awards-worthy, the kind that puts an actor back in the spotlight whether they want to be there or not. "So Jodie, this new film," Kelly began, leaning forward with genuine enthusiasm. "I have to say, I watched it twice because the first time I was just so captivated I felt like I missed things. Your performance is absolutely stunning. What drew you to this particular role?" Jodie's response was professional, measured. "Thank you. I think what interested me most was the complexity of the character. She's not someone you can easily define, and I appreciate when a script trusts the audience enough not to spell everything out for them." Kelly nodded, her smile never wavering. "Absolutely, and you've always been drawn to those kinds of roles, haven't you? Characters that challenge both you and the audience. I mean, looking back at your career, that's been a constant thread." "I suppose so," Jodie replied, her tone even. "Though I try not to overthink it too much. You follow what interests you at the time." There was a pause, brief but noticeable. Kelly shifted in her seat, and you could see her preparing to pivot to something else. This is where things started to take a turn. Kelly's next question seemed innocent enough on the surface, but there was something in the way she asked it, a kind of curiosity that felt just a little too probing. "You know, one thing I've always admired about you, Jodie, is how you've managed to maintain such a level of privacy in an industry that constantly demands we share everything. That must take incredible discipline. How do you navigate that balance? Especially now, when social media makes everyone feel like they deserve access to every part of your life." Jodie's expression shifted slightly, not dramatically, but enough that anyone paying attention would notice. Her jaw tightened just a fraction, and when she spoke, her words came out more clipped than before. "I don't think it's about discipline so much as it's about boundaries. I've never felt that being an actor means I owe people access to my personal life. My work speaks for itself, or it should, and everything else is just noise." Kelly nodded along, but instead of moving on, she pressed further. "But don't you think there's something to be said for connecting with your audience on a personal level? I mean, fans feel like they know you, like they've grown up with you in some cases. Doesn't that relationship matter?" "The relationship that matters is the one between the work and the audience," Jodie said, her voice taking on a firmer edge. "When someone watches a film I'm in, that's the connection. That's what should resonate. What I do in my private time, who I spend it with, what my daily routine looks like, none of that enhances or diminishes the work." Kelly seemed to sense she was treading into uncomfortable territory, but rather than backing off, she seemed almost compelled to continue. Maybe it was the journalist in her, that instinct to dig deeper when you sense there's more to uncover. Or maybe it was simply the format of daytime television, where personal revelations are the currency that keeps audiences engaged. I hear what you're saying, Kelly said, her tone still friendly but carrying an undercurrent of persistence. But I think what people are curious about, and I'm including myself in this, is how you manage to keep that separation so complete, especially in moments when the industry itself seems to demand more from you. Like during awards season, for example, when the press tours and the interviews become almost unavoidable. Jodie sat back in her chair, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable, and you could see Kelly starting to realize that maybe she had pushed too far. But Jodie wasn't done. When she finally spoke, her words were deliberate, chosen carefully. Kelly, I'm going to be very direct with you, because I think that's more respectful than dancing around this. The fact that something is demanded doesn't mean I have to supply it. I've been in this industry for over 50 years. I started when I was 3 years old. I've seen every iteration of what fame means, what celebrity means, and what the public thinks they're entitled to, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the happiest, most fulfilled people I know in this business are the ones who figured out early that you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you choose to live your life. The audience had gone quiet. This wasn't the playful back and forth they were used to on this show. This was something else entirely, something more real and less polished than the usual daytime fare. Kelly, to her credit, tried to lighten the mood. Well, I certainly respect that, she said, her smile a bit more strained now. And I hope you know I'm not trying to pry into anything you're not comfortable sharing. I think what I'm really asking about is more the philosophy behind it. You know, how you arrived at that perspective. The philosophy, Jodie repeated, and there was something almost sardonic in the way she said it. The philosophy is simple. My job is to act. That's what I'm good at. That's what I've dedicated my life to. Everything else, all the other stuff that comes with it, the fame, the recognition, the public interest, those are byproducts. They're not the point. And I've never believed that accepting one means you have to accept all of it. Kelly nodded, but you could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to navigate this conversation back to safer ground. Instead, she made a choice that would prove to be a critical mistake. She decided to get specific. I think that makes complete sense, Kelly said, and obviously everyone has the right to their privacy. I guess what I'm curious about, and what I think a lot of people wonder, is whether that approach ever feels isolating. Because so much of this industry is built on relationships, on connections, on being part of a community. Do you ever feel like you're on the outside of that? Jodie's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you asking me if I feel lonely, Kelly? The directness of the question seemed to catch Kelly off guard. No, I mean, not lonely exactly. I'm asking if the choice to maintain that level of privacy comes with trade-offs. Everything comes with trade-offs, Jodie said. But I'd rather trade publicity for peace than the other way around. And I don't think that's a radical position, honestly. I think most people, if they really examined their lives, would choose the same thing. The difference is, most people don't have cameras following them around waiting for them to make that choice visible. The tension in the room was building now, and Kelly seemed to recognize that she needed to shift gears. But instead of moving to a completely different topic, she tried one more angle, and this is where things really started to unravel. You mentioned cameras, and I think that's interesting because you've been in front of them for so long, longer than most people in Hollywood. You've literally grown up in this industry. So I'm curious, has your relationship with all of this, with fame and privacy and public life, has that evolved over time, or have you always felt this way? Jodie leaned forward now, her posture shifting from relaxed to alert. Kelly, I'm going to ask you something, and I'd like you to answer honestly. What is it you're really trying to get at here? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kelly looked genuinely taken aback by the directness of Jodie's question. You could see her, trying to recalibrate, that split-second calculation every talk show host has to make when an interview starts going off script. Her smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, but that moment was enough. Everyone watching could feel it. I'm not trying to get at anything, Kelly said, her voice taking on a slightly defensive tone. I'm just having a conversation. This is what we do on this show. We talk, we connect, we let the audience get to know the person behind the performances. That's all this is. Jodie didn't break eye contact. Is it though? Because it feels like you've been circling the same territory for the last several minutes. You keep coming back to my privacy, my boundaries, how I choose to live my life outside of my work. So I'm asking again, what are you actually trying to get me to talk about? The audience was completely silent now. This had moved beyond uncomfortable and into something else entirely, a real moment of confrontation playing out in real time. Kelly glanced briefly at her producers off camera, a fleeting look that suggested she was hoping for some kind of lifeline, but none came. She was on her own. Jodie, I promise you, there's no hidden agenda here, Kelly said, and you could hear the frustration starting to creep into her voice. I'm asking questions that I think are interesting, that I think viewers want to know about. You're an incredibly private person. Everyone knows that, and I think there's genuine curiosity about how you've managed to maintain that in an industry that makes it almost impossible. But why is that interesting? Jodie shot back. Why does my privacy, the very fact that I choose to keep certain things to myself, why does that become the story? Why can't the story just be the work? I've made dozens of films. I've directed. I've produced. I've spent half a century contributing to this art form. And yet here we are, once again, talking about everything except that. Kelly shifted in her seat, and for the first time, you could see a flash of genuine irritation cross her face. With all due respect, Jodie, you knew what this show was when you agreed to come on. This isn't a press junket where you get to control every single question. This is a talk show. We talk about life, about experiences, about the person. That's the format. That's what people tune in for. I agreed to come on because I was told we'd be discussing my new film, Jodie said, her voice level but firm, and we spent all of about 2 minutes on that before you pivoted to this. So forgive me if I'm a little confused about what I supposedly signed up for. Kelly let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. Okay, you want to talk about the film? Let's talk about the film. Your character in this movie. She's someone who's been running from her past, someone who's built walls around herself to keep people out. And I think it's fair to say that's not entirely unfamiliar territory for you as a performer. You've played variations of this kind of character before. So my question is, what is it about that particular type of person that you connect with? The implication was clear, and Jodie caught it immediately. Her expression hardened, and when she spoke, there was an edge to her voice that hadn't been there before. You're doing it again, she said. You're asking about the film, but you're not really asking about the film. You're trying to draw some parallel between the character and me personally, trying to get me to psychoanalyze myself for your audience, and I'm not going to do that. I'm asking you to talk about your craft, Kelly countered, about why you make the choices you make as an actor. That's a legitimate question. It would be if that's what you were actually asking, Jodie said, but it's not. You want me to confirm some narrative you've already constructed about who I am. The guarded actress, the intensely private star, the woman who won't let anyone in. That's the story you want to tell, and you want me to give you the quotes to support it. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in being reduced to a character study for daytime television. The tension in the studio was suffocating now. Kelly's producers were definitely having a conversation off camera. You could see the frantic movement in the periphery, but Kelly herself seemed almost locked into the confrontation now, unable or unwilling to back down. You know what, Jodie? Kelly said, and her voice had taken on a sharper quality. I've been doing this for years. I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I've never had anyone be this hostile about simple questions. Most people appreciate the opportunity to connect with an audience, to share something real. But you act like every question is an invasion, like I'm asking you to reveal state secrets. It's exhausting, honestly. Jodie's eyebrows raised slightly. Exhausting for you? You think this is exhausting for you? Yes, actually, I do, Kelly said. Because I'm trying to have a conversation and you're treating it like an interrogation. I'm not the enemy here. I'm not some tabloid journalist trying to trap you. I'm someone who genuinely admires your work and thought it would be interesting to have a real conversation about it, about you, about your perspective. But apparently that's too much to ask. A real conversation would involve mutual respect, Jodie said, her voice quiet but intense. It would involve accepting when someone tells you they're not comfortable with a line of questioning and moving on. It wouldn't involve continually pushing and prodding and trying to find different ways to ask the same invasive question. That's not conversation, Kelly. That's harassment dressed up as friendliness. Kelly's face flushed. Harassment? Are you serious right now? I asked you about your career, about your approach to fame, about your work. Those are standard interview questions. If you can't handle that, then maybe you shouldn't agree to do interviews. Maybe you're right, Jodie said. And there was something almost sad in her voice now. Maybe I shouldn't. The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Kelly seemed to realize she'd pushed too far, that her frustration had gotten the better of her, and now she was watching the interview slip completely out of her control. She tried to course correct, her expression softening as she reached out slightly with one hand. Jodie, I didn't mean it like that, Kelly said, her voice gentler now. I'm sorry if I came across as dismissive. That wasn't my intention. Can we just reset here? Start fresh with a different topic? But Jodie was already shaking her head slowly, a look of resignation settling over her features. No, Kelly, I don't think we can, because this isn't about one question or one topic. This is about a fundamental difference in what we think this conversation should be. You want content, you want moments, you want something that's going to resonate with your audience. And I understand that, I really do. But I'm not here to provide that kind of entertainment at the expense of my own comfort. Kelly's frustration was bubbling back up now. You could see it in the set of her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened. So what are you here for then? Because I'm genuinely confused. You agreed to come on a talk show, but you don't want to talk about anything personal. You're promoting a film, but you get defensive when I try to connect it to you as an artist. What exactly did you think was going to happen? I thought I was going to have a professional conversation about my work, Jodie replied, her voice steady but firm. I thought we'd discuss the themes of the film, the director's vision, the experience of bringing this character to life. Instead, you've spent the majority of this interview trying to therapize me, trying to figure out why I am the way I am, as if there's something wrong with wanting boundaries. There's nothing wrong with wanting boundaries, Kelly said, but there's also nothing wrong with asking questions. That's literally my job. And I don't think I've been unreasonable here. I haven't asked you anything inappropriate or invasive. I've asked you about your career, about your choices, about your perspective on the industry. These are normal questions. Normal doesn't mean necessary, Jodie countered. And just because you can ask something doesn't mean you should. There's a difference between curiosity and intrusion, Kelly, and you've crossed that line multiple times in the last 15 minutes. Kelly threw up her hand slightly, a gesture of exasperation. Okay, you know what? I give up. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know how to interview you in a way that doesn't somehow offend you. So why don't you tell me, what questions would you like me to ask? What would make this acceptable to you? The condescension in Kelly's tone was unmistakable now, and Jodie's expression hardened again. I don't want you to ask me anything at this point. I think we've both made our positions pretty clear, and I don't see any value in continuing this." That's when you could see the realization hit Kelly. This wasn't just a tense moment that would pass. This was actually ending. Jodie wasn't bluffing. She wasn't being dramatic for effect. She was genuinely done with this conversation. Kelly's demeanor shifted immediately, panic flickering across her face. "Wait, Jodie, come on," Kelly said, leaning forward. "Let's not end things like this. We can move on. We can talk about something completely different. What about your production company? Or the documentary you're working on? We haven't touched on any of that yet." "And we're not going to," Jodie said simply. She reached up and unclipped the small microphone from her collar, handling it carefully as she detached the battery pack. The technical crew didn't know whether to intervene or stay back, caught between following protocol and respecting what was clearly an uncomfortable situation. Jodie placed the microphone on the arm of her chair with deliberate precision, a final act of professionalism even in the midst of walking away. Kelly stood up now, her body language shifting from confrontational to almost pleading. "Jodie, please, I'm asking you, as one professional to another, let's finish this interview. We've got 10 more minutes scheduled. We can salvage this." "Why would I want to salvage it?" Jodie asked, and there was genuine curiosity in her voice now. "What would be the point? So you can get your full segment? So the network doesn't have to scramble to fill time? Those aren't my problems, Kelly. My problem is that I came here in good faith and found myself in an interview that felt more like an ambush." "An ambush?" Kelly's voice rose slightly. "That's ridiculous. You're being incredibly unfair right now. I've been nothing but respectful." "You've been polite," Jodie corrected. "There's a difference. You can ask invasive questions with a smile on your face, but that doesn't make them less invasive. And you can frame boundary pushing as just doing your job, but that doesn't make it acceptable." The audience was still frozen, caught between the instinct to support their beloved host and the understanding that they were witnessing something genuinely uncomfortable. Kelly seemed to become aware of the audience again, remembering that this whole thing was being recorded, that this moment would exist beyond the studio. "Jodie," Kelly said, and her voice had taken on a different quality now, something almost vulnerable. "I don't want this to be the story. I don't want people to remember this as the interview where you walked out. Can we please just sit back down and find a way to end this on a better note?" Jodie paused, studying Kelly's face for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but no less resolved. "Kelly, I understand that this is difficult for you. I understand that this isn't how you wanted things to go. But I need you to understand something too. I've spent my entire adult life being put in situations where I'm expected to just go along, to be accommodating, to not make waves even when I'm uncomfortable. And I'm done with that. I'm at a point in my life and my career where I don't have to tolerate being made to feel like my boundaries are unreasonable. So no, I'm not going to sit back down. I'm not going to pretend this conversation didn't happen the way it happened." Kelly's face went through a series of emotions: hurt, anger, embarrassment, all flickering across her features in rapid succession. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "Walking out like this, it's only going to create more attention, more questions, the exact thing you say you don't want." "Maybe," Jodie acknowledged, "but at least it'll be on my terms." She took a step back from the interview area, creating physical distance between herself and Kelly. "I hope your next guest is more willing to play along. But I'm not that person." Kelly turned back to face the audience and the cameras, her professional mask slipping back into place with visible effort. "We're going to take a quick break," she said, her voice strained but attempting brightness. But Jodie was already walking toward the edge of the stage, her posture straight, her pace measured. She wasn't running away or making a scene. She was simply leaving, with the same quiet dignity she'd brought to the conversation. The last image before the show cut to commercial was of Jodie Foster's back as she walked away, and Kelly Clarkson standing alone on the stage, looking shell-shocked The empty chair across from her a stark reminder of just how badly things had gone wrong. What happened in that interview was more than just a celebrity walking off a talk show. It was a collision between two different philosophies about what public figures owe their audiences. Kelly represented the modern format, built on personal connection and emotional revelation. Jodie represented the idea that an artist's work should speak for itself, that privacy isn't something you have to justify or explain. When those two approaches collided, something had to give. If you want to see more breakdowns of moments like these, where real tension breaks through the polished surface of celebrity interviews, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And drop a comment below answering this question: do you think Jodie was right to walk off? Or should she have tried to make it work? Let me know what you think.